All right, let's talk about something that can totally change the way you ride. We're going to dive into a super simple technique that takes those clunky, sometimes jerky gear changes and makes them so incredibly smooth, it feels like the bike is shifting itself. Let's get right into it.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever been rolling on the throttle, really getting up to speed, and right when you shift, wham, the whole bike kind of lurches on you? It's a really common thing, and man, it can just ruin the flow of a great ride. And look, if that's happening to you, the first thing you need to know is you're not alone, not at all. We're going to call this the clunky shift problem. And believe me, it's something pretty much every single rider has to deal with at some point.
I think this quote it nails the feeling perfectly, right? It's not just a little bump. It's that really distinct, clunky, almost notchy sensation. It kind of makes you feel like you're fighting the machine instead of being a part of it.
And let's just be super clear about this. This is not a sign that you're a bad rider. Far from it. It's a really common hurdle. Think of it like the factory default setting on your shifting. And today, we're going to give it a serious upgrade.
So, to figure out the solution, we first have to take a quick look at the way most of us were probably taught to shift. The by-the-book method you learned in your basic rider course.
You know this dance, right? You roll off the gas, you pull that clutch lever all the way to the grip, you make a really deliberate click with your foot, then you slowly, carefully ease the clutch out as you roll back on the throttle. It's a very distinct 5-step process.
And here is the absolute heart of the problem with that little dance. It's just too slow. In that brief moment it takes to do all 5 of those steps, your bike is losing momentum. And that loss of speed, well, that's what causes that big lurch when the power comes back on.
But what if we could make that whole process almost instantaneous? Well, we can. And that's where this awesome little trick comes in. It's called the preload technique.
Preloading is, well, that's exactly what it sounds like. You're basically loading up the shifter with just a little bit of pressure before you even think about touching the clutch. This tiny change in sequence is what sets the stage for a lightning-fast, totally seamless shift.
And honestly, this is where the magic happens. When you get this right, it truly feels like the bike is reading your mind and shifting for you. That clunkiness just vanishes, and it's replaced by this super satisfying, smooth click into the next gear.
All right, so let's get into the nuts and bolts. How do you actually do this? It's way easier than it sounds, and it breaks down into a really simple action you can practice.
So it's basically 3 quick moves. First, obviously, get your foot under the shifter. Second, and this is the most important part, apply just a little bit of upward pressure. Just enough to take the free play or the slack out of the lever. You're not trying to force the gear change, you're just resting its weight on your toe. Then, while you're holding that tiny bit of pressure, you just roll off the throttle and give the clutch a super quick squeeze.
And the result is immediate. I mean, it's crazy, because you've already loaded up that shifter. The split second the clutch frees up the transmission, pop! The gear lever has nowhere else to go but up. It just clicks right into place. The first time you do it right, it's actually going to surprise you how fast and smooth it is.
Now, a couple of key details to remember as you practice this. You're going to notice you don't have to pull the clutch lever all the way back to the handlebar anymore. Nope, just a quick, short little flick is all it takes. And yeah, this totally works for downshifting too, but I'd really recommend you get the feel for it on the upshifts first. It's just a bit easier to learn that way.
So once you get this technique dialed in, what's the real payoff? It's simple, really. It makes you a smoother rider, a faster rider, and honestly, just a better, more connected rider.
This really lays it all out, doesn't it? The standard shift is slow, it takes a long time, and all that time can actually upset the bike's balance, especially if you're in a corner. But the preloaded shift, it's instant, it's smooth, and because it happens so fast, the bike's chassis stays perfectly stable, and you spend way less time just coasting with the clutch pulled in.
So when you boil it all down, preloading is just plain superior. It keeps the bike perfectly stable, it slashes the time you're not under power, it lets you accelerate way more quickly and smoothly, and maybe best of all, it gives you that amazing, butter-smooth shift every single time. And not right there. That's the real goal. You want to get to a point where shifting isn't this clunky, multi-step thought process anymore. It just becomes this seamless, fluid, practically automatic part of accelerating. It just happens. So here's your homework. The very next time you're out on your bike, I want you to consciously practice this. Find a nice open road and just focus on the feel. Feel for that little bit of slack in the lever, apply that gentle pressure, and feel that magic moment when the bike just pops into gear for you. I promise you, once you master this, you'll wonder how you ever rode any other way. And it kind of makes you think, right? If this one tiny adjustment can make such a huge difference, what other little habit is just waiting out there to totally transform your ride? Something to think about. Ride safe out there.